Light me up, don't you stop, 'cause tonight it's on the line.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today you've got two Tyrones instead of one. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yeah, so this is your third time in Sweden, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so it's been a while because the last time you visited me was before COVID, I think.
Yeah.
So we actually haven't seen each other in a year and a half, which is crazy. Definitely one of the downsides when you live on the opposite side of the world compared to the rest of your family. But I want to talk to you about like this trip back to Sweden, because the last time you were here was like before COVID. You tried to come once, I remember, but Sweden had some weird rules that Americans couldn't come in. So we were like so excited to see each other like 6 months ago. Couldn't even get on the flight. I was like,
that
what?
was frustrating. Literally had booked my trip 3 months in advance, and then I show up to the airport, bags packed. I had like my COVID vaccine card, I had a negative PCR test, and then to find out that they shut off their borders 48 hours before my trip was
they changed the law like a week before and was like, I think it was like the first day or something that the law went into effect. So
yeah, because I was traveling overnight. I would have arrived on the first day it went into effect. So it was just terrible timing, but hey, I finally made it. That's all that matters.
Thankfully that's all behind us now. But now back in Sweden, staying with me for a couple weeks. What are your thoughts so far? Like, since you've been away for so long, is there something that like just stood out to you?
Man, every time I come back to the city, I just fall more and more in love with it. I mean, and we've had this talk numerous of times about just like just losing myself into the city. I mean, just the architecture, the historical background of the city is super fascinating, at least from like an outsider's perspective. The one thing that I think that I kind of took away the most, especially, I don't know if it's just because of where you're located here in Stockholm, but is the amount of walking that we can do to pretty much get to any area of Stockholm. I mean, we've gone pretty much to different corners, but we've been traveling just by foot every single time. And that's one, it's very refreshing. I mean, it's really nice. And you also get to see a lot of the city and things like that. But that's something that, you know, if I go anywhere, at least where I'm located in the U.S., in Portland area, if I go anywhere, I basically need to rely on a car.
Yeah. I mean, I've been living here in Sweden for like 5 years and never had a car at all. The only times I've like rented a car was when I was moving or something, or if I'm with friends and we're going to a place that's a little bit more remote. It can be nice to have a car, but with that being said, the public transportation here is really great. You can get anywhere. When I was living in Norrköping before, super easy to get around because it's even smaller city. And Stockholm, it's like the perfect size. Luckily, I live like right in the city center, which makes it easy to walk 20 minutes to Södermalm, 20 minutes to Östermalm. I mean, you don't even need public transportation where we are.
Yeah.
But if we do want to take the public transportation, it's just so easy.
Yeah.
Whereas the U.S., we don't really have that.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine living where we grew up in Vancouver, Washington, just a suburb of Portland, without a car would be like impossible. You couldn't do anything. You'd be stuck.
Yeah, and that's literally, I mean, I think that's why it grabbed my attention so quickly being here, is how easily we are able to get around just by foot or by the use of public transportation. It's very refreshing to be able to actually get to do that.
Exactly. I think also when you like factor that into the cost of living, like owning a car and paying for gas and transportation and insurance and all that kind of adds up. So even though like Stockholm on paper, especially compared to like other parts of Sweden, you're like, oh, Stockholm's so expensive. But when you add up the fact that you don't need a car, actually I think it's kind of annoying to have a car when you live in the city center, because you have to worry about parking, and that's an additional expense, and it's always sort of crowded and things going on here. So it's not a fun city to try to find parking. So actually it's much more convenient to not have a car, and I think you can save a lot of money and maybe put more of that towards having a nice place. But definitely if I lived like outside the city of Stockholm, more in the city suburbs, these types of areas, I think it would be nice to have a car and have that freedom. I'm actually taking my Swedish driver's license right now. There's a huge difference. Like, I feel like if you have a pulse, you can just like sign up. You start practicing with when you're in America, right? Like, it's so easy for us Americans to get the driver's license.
Yeah. Literally start at 15 with a parent in the car, and then it's like 6 months of like doing that, and then it's like, okay, here you go.
Yeah, I mean, the test was so easy in America, and here it's like, I've been driving for 10 years, so I feel very, very confident and comfortable driving the vehicle and not worried about like the actual driving test whatsoever. But when it comes to like the written exam, you have to memorize like all these like facts and figures, and it's not in like the system that we use in America with like pounds and stuff. So it's all kilograms, centimeters, which I'm used to now, but still like remembering, okay, heavy trailer, light trailer, 700 kilograms, 3,500 kilograms, different rules, regulations. Child's 135 centimeters versus 140 centimeters. Can they sit in the front seat, back seat? Millimeters for the wheels and tires. It's like all these like little facts and figures, like where do you change the oil, where do you do this, where do you do that. It's like we never had any of that for the American.
I know. I remember when you first mentioned that you had to like memorize like the weight of like trailers and things that you can haul. Never heard of that. Never seen that on a driver's test.
Exactly. But I think it's easier in the U.S. because you need to have a car to get around.
Yeah.
So they need to make the requirements probably easier, because if you don't have a license, like I have a lot of friends that are like my age, 27, and they don't even have their driver's licenses yet.
Wow.
Or just like one of our friends, Julia, that we were hanging out with the other day. So she's 30 years old. Doesn't have a driver's license.
And I mean, I feel like all those figures and stuff, like the trailers and stuff, if you are to do that in the U.S., like there's special licenses for that. Like you have your commercial driver's license and things like that where you can operate, bigger vehicles. But for just a common everyday just car user, like I don't know what I need to know the weight for what I can haul in a trailer. But
exactly. It's crazy too, because like with an American license, you take one test, it doesn't matter what kind of car you drive, and it works for any kind of car, like automatic or manual, doesn't matter. So I took my driving test with an automatic car, and I'm allowed to drive manual cars if I want in the US. And I've actually driven manual cars in Sweden. I'm not very good at it, but I can do it. I just like, we never really do that in the US because most of the cars are automatic. So it's kind of funny because I was allowed to drive in Sweden with my American license my first year while I was here. So when I was together with Lynn, I was driving us around places, even though she had her license too. It was like not a big issue for me to just be driving, so used to it. And then after a year, it's like, oh, I'm not allowed to drive in Sweden anymore. I have to take this other license. So it's like, wait, this system is so...
And it's even more complicated now. After you've already been doing it.
Exactly. So imagine like failing the driver's license test. And it's like, I've already been driving for 10 years.
You're a smart guy. You'll pass it.
Yeah, I got this app on my phone, like studying a little bit every day. So, all right, what are some other things that you've noticed coming here?
Yeah, so the second thing that I think, and this is another one we've mentioned, is the style here in Stockholm, how well dressed everyone is.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel very out of place sometimes just in like a t-shirt and jeans when I'm going around, but I mean like that's very casual, but I mean it's very business attire oriented. Or I mean even like the casual dress here is still a bit more like proper, and I mean with, for a lack of a better word, fancy almost.
Yeah. I would say one thing too to go along with that is, because the temperatures get a lot colder here and you have more 4 seasons, people are just used to wearing different layers and different types of clothes. Like we were hanging out with our friend from Australia the other day, and he was just like, yeah, I was basically wearing tank top and shorts every day because it's like 30 degrees almost year round. And like even in the coldest winter days, maybe it will get down on the low end like 10 degrees. So he barely owns any pairs of pants, just living his life.
He said he didn't even own a coat. Like
he's like, I had to come here. He's like, I had some thin like
gym tops,
jumpers.
And that's
so
about it.
When you can wear shorts every day, you don't have the same sort of motivation to dress well. And same, like I had a friend here from Hawaii, and she was saying that like people just walk around like without a shirt on because you're like living on the beach, and people just don't have any sense of style. Then she came here and she's like, wow, everybody's dressed so nicely. And she liked it because she was just used to seeing the guys with like shirtless or flip-flops or shirts with like different shorts that like didn't match or anything. So I think because it's colder here, like you have more accessories, you have different things. Because if you're wearing like a ski jacket with one color and like different, it's just gonna look really, really bad. So you have to put in some sort of effort, I feel like.
Definitely. I think with that being said too is the amount of options and like the fashion sense that, especially like from a guy's perspective, like I think it's just generic though here within Europe. I think Europe has a really good sense of style and fashion. And so you see that more often than you would back in the States. I mean, I think like, especially maybe it's just because I work in like the gym industry, so I'm surrounded by people wearing just, casual gym wear all the time. But even when you go out into the streets of like Portland, things like that, the style is drastically different. I think it's a lot more casual, you know, a lot of like baggy sweatpants, joggers, things like that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more sporty, where here it just seems it's a bit more professional.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's nice to see that.
I think one of the things that Swedish people do really well is they stick to the basics, and they do a really good job at sticking to the basics in like whatever it is.
Colors.
Like, you're not going to see people going crazy with their style with like super bright colors or like super like eye-catching pieces as often in Sweden, but like also like as you're a personal trainer as well in the US, and we notice like the Swedish personal trainers with their clients, they're doing exercises that are like by the book, basic fundamentals.
Yeah.
But it was never anything that was just like eye-catching where you're like, wow, that looks different, that looks crazy.
Yeah.
But I feel like that just could be maybe like in general, like Swedish people are really good at what they do, but they stick to like basic things that work. And I think when it comes to style, that's like so simple, because oftentimes the basics is just what looks good, whereas Americans are like more likely to go crazy in one direction or the other in a lot of aspects, and sometimes it can look really good and sometimes it can be a nightmare.
Do you think, like, kind of tying back to that, do you feel like Americans feel like the need to almost like stand out sometimes?
For sure. I would say like Swedish people are just like less likely to want to stand out. Like a perfect example, I was playing soccer with this new soccer team that I've joined, and I didn't know the system. Like, you're supposed to grab your jersey at the game, whatever number you choose. The coach writes it down, so you're on the roster, so they know who's got what. So you can change numbers every game, basically.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this, so I was one of the last people to get my jersey. And I go, there's only like 2 jerseys left or 3 jerseys left, and one of them was number 10, which is like a super popular
That's my number.
for like football soccer players. And I'm going, why? I'll take this. Why did nobody take 10? Like in the U.S., this would be like the first number to go, right?
Yeah.
And I asked some people, and I was like, how come nobody took 10? They're like, oh, we don't want to stand out. We don't want to draw attention to ourselves, right?
Man.
We were like, we don't want the other team to be like, oh, this guy's good, or he thinks too highly of himself. I'm like, what a different mindset, because in the U.S., every's like fighting over that.
Yeah, you show up 30 minutes early just so you can grab that 10 jersey. Like.
Exactly. And here's like, wait, it's still here. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, of course I'm going to take it. So it's just like nobody wants to stand out. Same thing if there's like, if you're at a party or something and you're all eating food and there's just a little bit of food left, nobody wants to take that last piece of food. Where in America, they're like, screw it, I'm going to take it.
I'm asking.
Yeah.
Did you want that?
So it's like, almost like they're very polite in the way where they don't want to draw unnecessary attention to themselves. And I feel like I kind of like living in this culture as well, where nobody's like taking up the spotlight too much. Everybody's sort of like relaxed and calming, and it creates this sort of like sense of like politeness and calmness throughout the society, which can be really refreshing, because nobody's gonna be like annoying you in the same kind of way, or just like less so, I would say, compared to other countries where, like, I just spent some time in Spain in the winter, for example, and people are more loud and partying. And not to say that people are disrespectful there, but you know, it's just a different culture, and people are more likely to stand out there.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I think definitely too in America there's like this competitive environment. I mean, I think it ties back to like the capitalistic outlook of like trying to create something unique, different from the rest. So it's almost like what separates you from all the other brands or all the other companies or all the other styles is, I mean, taking those maybe bigger and bolder risks, because that's what's gonna stand out compared to all the rest, right? So it could just be that that's like a sense that's just kind of captivated a society of like being unique and being different, a way to stand out. And yeah, it's interesting kind of having that mentality.
Because I've made some videos about this before, but they have this concept of like jantelagen, which is like this it's an old Danish rule of like, or like a code to live by, basically. And the whole purpose of like jantelagen, it's more of like the older generation that kind of might have been affected by this more. People in this generation might not experience it as much, but like it's still sort of a prevalent like thing throughout society. And the whole basic idea behind jantelagen is like not to stand out, not to think you're like anything special, just like go with the flow, go with the crowd, don't don't like bother anyone else, just like be humble. So you see this with like Swedish actors when they go abroad and they win awards, or like they win an Oscar, and they're like kind of afraid to like display their Oscar in their home because they're like, oh, I don't want, this whole thing like that. That's not a big deal, right? So it's like a completely different mindset. Whereas like Americans, they want that attention and like would be displaying it maybe more openly. And of course, this is gonna vary from person to person, but I think this sort of like is more of a vibe with like my mindset as well. And I notice it also in like the dating culture here. Like people date like so subtly here. Like the flirting, it just kind of like flies under the radar, because in that same way, like people aren't grabbing attention. Like guys aren't doing like over the top things to get girls' attention, which I think some girls kind of like appreciate that. Like they're not getting approached by guys all the time, like trying different things. And maybe some girls want more attention, and then they go abroad and they're like, this is great, wow. Like the cute Swedish girls that go to America, and then all of a sudden like everybody's paying a ton of attention to them. It's just different. So maybe for like you coming in from the US, for example, like if you were to go up to a Swedish girl on the street here, they're not used to like guys going up to them. So foreigners are like, well, how do I like flirt with the Swedish girls, or like make it happen with the Swedish girls? And I would say like, on the one hand, you're sort of at an advantage because nobody else is going up to them. You can go up to somebody, start a conversation, and they'll be like a little bit more open and receptive to it because they're not used to it, right?
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. I think it's funny. I mean, being a single male, as soon as I got here, I'm on like the dating apps and things like that. And I thought it was really funny on like the Hinge profile where you can set like prompts and things. It says like best way to ask me out. A lot of the girls there just ask, and like you don't see that in the U.S.
What do they say in the U.S.?
Oh gosh, I don't think people fill out that prompt. Like,
don't ask me out.
Don't ask. But I just thought that was so interesting. It's like, oh, okay, like, well, here we go.
Have you tried it?
Not yet. Oh. Not yet. That's coming. Stay tuned.
Well, we'll see if that works. Maybe that's just something they say, and then you never know.
Yeah, could be. Could be.
Why don't you tell us one more thing that you notice is like sort of a big difference between where we're from in the U.S. and being here in Sweden?
Yeah, I'd say probably the third thing for me would probably be the difference in just like the sporting environment, like the professionalism of like the different clubs. I mean, being a soccer player, I've had the opportunity to play with some soccer clubs since I've been here, which has been a great experience. But I think what really sets, European sports away from the U.S. is just like this culmination and this cohesive unit between like the different leagues. I noticed like the club that I played with, which was in the fourth division.
Yeah, it's called Division 2 in Sweden, but it's Division 2 for football in Sweden is actually like Division 4.
I mean, it was so professional. I mean, you had cameras out at the training sessions to record the team throughout the sessions. The technical ability of the players was extremely high compared to what we see back in the U.S. I mean, I really felt like I was part of a professional team. I mean, the players were wearing like the heart rate monitor bands. I mean, everything when you show up to the field was already set up with the different stations and things like that. And that's, I mean, having played for an NCAA school for 4 years in college, it was not even at that level of professionalism. I mean, so it was really cool to see. And I mean, this was a younger team of players that still have the ambitions to go on and play at the higher level. So, I mean, you can see why Europe is known for, producing the next top talent in world football, is because the amount of attention and professionalism that they get from such a young, early age, I mean, just carries with them to set them up for success for the rest of their career.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I noticed like Swedish companies and sports teams, they're not afraid to purchase software and purchase equipment that's really gonna like help them be their best, whereas maybe other countries, they're not always on the cutting edge. I feel like Sweden's a pretty modern country. They like to be on the forefront of what's going on. And my day job, I'm working with software for sports clubs, and a lot of our biggest clients are in Sweden because they want to have access to the top software to develop. And we saw that with the team that you're trying out for.
Yeah.
They're using our software 360 player. They're using video cameras to film all their training sessions and everything so they can analyze all the footage and everything like that. And they've got heart rate monitors, like you were saying. And this is like the 4th highest level in Sweden.
Yeah, so, and I mean, to kind of touch with that as well is, I mean, you look at like the training facilities and things like that. It's more than, just just one sport, so to speak. I mean, like the club that we were at, they had an entire basketball court, a paddle court. I mean, a full track for athletics with you know long distance jumping, things like that. Where it was so cool to see that within this one sporting club, you had so many different, you know, facets of what you can train, what you can practice. And yeah, it was really cool to see. Every time I come back to Europe, that's one of the things that really grabs my attention. I mean, is how sport-minded the people are here.
And one thing that's cool is that the league system in Sweden and Europe in general is you have promotion and relegation.
Yes.
So the top teams in Swedish leagues that finish first or maybe the second place, or there's a playoff sometimes for the second place, they'll go up a league, and vice versa. If you're finishing at the bottom, you're going down. And I think that leads to like a much more competitive and fun environment because you have something to work towards. Whereas if you're playing in a league in the US, like you win the league every year, it doesn't matter because you're not going to play against better teams.
100%. And I think, I mean, that competitive kind of culture and that competitive environment that it incorporates into a season, right? If you're the last place team in the US, you're like, well, we can try again next year, you know, we'll get our chance at all these other teams, you know, and just a matter of time. But I mean, here, if you're fighting for like a relegation battle or a promotion battle, it just puts that much more importance on the game that you're playing, and I like that. I mean, it also gives teams in lower leagues that opportunity to see their club grow or to, you know, to move on and take on bigger and better challenges. So it's just, once again, that cohesive kind of, you know, mentality of like, okay, you have something to actually play for, something to fight for.
Exactly. All right, guys, with that, we're going to wrap this video up. We got some more videos coming with my brother, and if you want to see the first ever video of him in Sweden with me, check out this video right here.
Wow, some time ago.
All right, see you guys in the next one.
Bye-bye.